Pray for Us Sinners, a short story by L.D. Roberts. Rudy stands on his front porch, cradling a chipped ceramic mug, letting it warm his fingers. The air is cool and smells of wood smoke and hay. He watches the last glimmer of darkness turn to morning. His wooden porch is faded and dull, the steps worn smooth by 1,000 footsteps. He has tended these 6,000 acres all his life. Since Anna passed, his only wish is to continue to care for the land until death takes him to be buried in the northeast corner next to her. He runs a hand across his face, a map of wrinkles from decades of New Mexico sun. He wears threadbare jeans, thick-soled boots, a plaid flannel shirt, faded beyond color. The fields have gifted their harvest and now lie dormant and fallow. 50 yards to his left is the owner's house. 3 stories of polished floors and bedrooms with 4-poster beds. A new wing added on for each generation. Carmen, the matriarch, sits in a large picture window rocking slowly. Rudy has never yearned to live in the family house. He is a rare man, content with his life. He waves. Carmen smiles. She is 93 years old and has lived all her life on the farm. Her face is filled with deep wrinkles and wisdom. Her wide eyes are cocoa-colored with a hint of wariness. Her straight silver hair flows down to the back of her knees. Soon, Rosa will arrive with morning tea. Carmen will take a sip to wet her throat, then reach for the family rosary, passed down for 6 generations. Her gnarled fingers will caress the ridge of each bead. Her lips will pray without effort. Rudy watches her kiss the rosary and begin, a daily comfort in a chaotic world. On her 3rd Hail Mary, Felipe comes striding out the front door of Carmen's house. He is medium height and round like a wooden barrel, Carmen's only child, born after decades of prayer and heartache. He is 55, going on 17. He wears designer jeans with razor-sharp creases. His short dark hair is buzzed on one side. His forehead is shiny with anti-aging cream. "Morning, Rudy." Rudy raises his coffee cup in reply. Felipe continues, "This year, it was a good harvest." Felipe turns towards the house, watches as the morning sun dances off chemical-laced blue water in the new swimming pool. The ground is littered with empty beer cans and damp towels. A soiled red paper napkin is stuck to the fence. Soon his men will sweep away the garbage and then start the day's work. Felipe looks at Rudy. The next harvest needs to be better. There are just so many bills. He shakes his head as if burdened with troubles. Rudy knows this is not true. The land, even the precious water rights, were paid off decades ago. The bills are Felipe's. Rudy remembers when Felipe was born. He entered the world 3 weeks early, red-faced and screaming. His impatient soul has not served him. He has casually tossed away 3 wives and countless opportunities. Felipe turns to the front window, glancing at Carmen. "Mama, she is looking frail. Do you think she is forgetting things?" he asks, tapping a manicured finger on the side of his head. "She is strong," Rudy says. "I went to a lawyer. Maybe it is time for Mama to let me manage the farm." He punches Rudy playfully on the arm. "See how well you and me can do together." Deep in the north field, Rudy notices a pivot sprinkler bent at an awkward angle. "I'll be back," he says, and begins walking across the field. "No need. It's nothing," Felipe calls after him, his voice tight. Rudy bends over the sprinkler, pulls a small spade from his back pocket. He frowns at the circle of compacted earth. He stabs his spade down, then tosses the dirt over his shoulder. On the 3rd stab, he feels a slight pressure. He drops his spade and digs carefully with his fingers. Did Manuel forget his pruning shears? No. The hole is exact, neat, and deliberate. He digs until he sees a tiny white patch. He continues until he uncovers a ceramic statue. It is a bearded man with long hair, a narrow face, and porcelain skin. A gold incense burner hangs from a long chain, double-wrapped around his open palm. Plump lips barely contain a naughty smile. Rudy's hand begins to burn. Overwhelmed with dread, he drops the statue, kneels, and makes the sign of the cross. "What is that?" Rudy shouts to Felipe, who has come up beside him. Felipe puffs up like a rooster. "It is a statue of Jesus Malverde." "Who?" "The patron saint of narco lords." Rudy stares at him, puzzled. "You know, drug runners, narco lords, the cartel. Next season we will plant marijuana, and I wanted a bit of insurance for the new crop." Felipe's eyes flash wide with excitement. "Rudy, you must realize the old ways are gone. It is time for a change, and I have decided the Romeros will no longer make the annual pilgrimage to Mexico City." Rudy stares at Felipe, letting his mind wander back. 89 years ago, when Ernesto Romero acquired the land, he would plant the best seeds, tend them lovingly like newborns, and each year harsh winds would blow, or drought, or locusts sweeping across the land, destroying only his crops, leaving the neighborhood farms overflowing with giant red tomatoes and succulent squash. After 5 seasons, Ernesto understood. His land was cursed. After weeks of praying and fasting, Ernesto found Juan Cortego in Mexico City, a respected man of great power, a shaman. Ernesto brought Juan Cortego to his fields, and together they walked barefoot, heads down, praying over every inch of the land. At 11 o'clock on the first morning, a scrawny Rudy filled the wooden bucket with water. He grasped the handle with both hands, then searched the fields for the men. He lifted the water bucket off the ground, his thin shoulders aching, the metal handle rubbing his bare hands raw. Reaching the men, he lowered the bucket to the ground. Juan Cortego, authoritative and commanding, raised his round muscled arms to the sky, chanting a blessing over the water. Rudy lifted a ladle of water to Juan Cortego, who opened his raw, parched lips and took a sip, very slowly, savoring each drop. Then Juan Cortego put down the ladle and placed his open palm on Rudy's forehead. The world fell into an expectant silence, holding its breath as Juan Cortego summoned the forces of heaven. He gathered himself up and stood tall and resplendent in the barren field, whispering a blessing, filling Rudy with serenity and wonder. When he finished, Rudy rose. Ernesto, a gruff, hard-faced man, signaled to Rudy for the ladle. Rudy filled it and took it to Ernesto, who drank deeply, then handed the ladle back to Rudy. "Gracias," he said, in a voice filled with hard use. Without another word, Juan Cortego and Ernesto turned and bowed their heads. Ernesto waited until Juan Cortego began to pray. Then Rudy picked up the water bucket. As he walked through the field, it began, a rustling of leaves, like a tiny whisper. He stood alone in the field as the power of the earth thrummed up through the soles of his feet, revealing to him, the land is healing. For 8 days, the demon fought Juan Cortego and Ernesto, with freezing rain, gale-force winds, whirling dust clouds that clogged their throats, leaving them weak and gasping. And still they walked and prayed. Ancient prayers and the rosary, over and over, until the morning Juan Cortego spotted a 4-leaf clover. He plucked it from the ground, handed it to Ernesto, and declared, "The curse, it is lifted." Ernesto put his blistered palms together and cried. The next harvest, the land overflowed with watermelon, corn, and peppers. Ernesto said you could spit on the ground and a peach tree would grow. The tomatoes were huge, bursting with juice. The land transformed into the Garden of Eden and has remained the same every year since 1934. Each year, on October 18th, a member of the Romero family makes a pilgrimage to Mexico City. The pilgrim will knock on the door at precisely 10 a.m., arms filled with juicy tomatoes, yellow corn, bright orange squash, all lush, fragrant, and nourishing. Rudy remembers the year Ernesto took him and Carmen on the pilgrimage. Carmen was young and nervous. She wore a white peasant blouse and long red embroidered skirt. Her hair was jet black and hung below her waist. She had dimples in her cheeks and smelled of lilacs. As they pulled into the driveway, Juan Cortego walked out of the house and pulled a box of vegetables out of the bed of the pickup. Young children dressed in bright colors poured out of the house to help. One Cortego walked around the truck, opened the passenger door, and peered at Carmen. He placed his hands together and bowed slowly to her. May Mother Mary and all the Cortego shamans bless you now and until the end of your days. Carmen's eyes began to shine with light. Her face glowed with youth and promise. She had often told Rudy it was the best moment of her life, until she gave birth to Felipe. Rudy has watched for decades as Felipe has grown from a spoiled brat into a bully, and is now a sad, failed man clinging to youth. Barely able to contain his disgust, Rudy asks, "How many?" 82, and I got a really good deal from Mr. Morales. He sweeps his arm in a circle across the acres, then proudly beams like he has completed a skyscraper after years of hard work. "Rudy," he says sternly, "there will be trouble if you disturb them. Leave them be, and do not tell Mama." Felipe picks up the saint and leans over, scrabbling in the dirt, as he pushes the statue back into the hole, then gives it a tender pat, as if tucking in a child. Rudy walks back to his porch, whispering, "Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners. Please send me the strength to banish this demon from Carmen's land." He continues to repeat this prayer the rest of the day and long into the night. The next morning, as Rudy is enjoying coffee on his porch, Carmen walks up slowly, lifting her long skirt so it does not drag on the ground. He reaches out a hand to help her up the 2 small steps. He pulls her rocker out for her. She settles in, pulling her red wool shawl around her shoulders. He gets her coffee. They sit and watch the mourning doves glide silently over the fields. "I know," she says. Rudy waits. "Dig them all up, destroy them, and replace each one with a cross." Rudy nods in agreement. "There will be trouble," she says. "Worse, if no one goes to Mexico City," he responds. "I am not a Romero, but I am willing to go." Carmen takes a sip of her coffee, closes her eyes, ponders the question. Finally she says, "There is no time. You cannot remove all the demons and get to Mexico City on time." "Juan Carlo can dig up the statues," he says. "No, Rudy, the land wants you. She trusts you. Can your sister Marisol make the trip?" Carmen shakes her head. "She is ill and infirm and would not survive the trip." "Will we send word to the Cortegos that no one will be coming?" She shakes her head. "I am sure that Juan Cortego Jr. knows." As the words leave her mouth, hot raging winds barrel out of the north, filled with evil and menace. The wind beats out a warning. "Jesus Malverde is coming. He is coming for your rich and fertile land." Carmen's eyes widen. Still, she remains calm. Rudy reaches over and lays his hand over her papery skin until the winds rage themselves out, leaving only an eerie silence. From dawn to dusk, for the next 6 days, Rudy and his men hunt every inch of the land. They unearth statues buried in clusters. 11 are found strewn haphazardly in the northwest field. There is one on the left side of each fence post. They work quickly, bent down, hands sheathed in thick leather gloves, crosses dangling from sweat-covered necks. Rudy pulls up another one and throws it in the back of the pickup, smiling as it shatters. Every night, the men stomp the statues into tiny bits of colored chalk, cover it with twigs, and light it. The fire cackles and spits, filling the air with white, billowing smoke. On the 6th night, Rudy watches the fire and reviews the day. Did Carter miss the 3rd fence post in the south field? His mind spins and his guts churn, and he comes up empty. Where is it? The last statue. The fire dies down. His feelings of failure course through him, heavy and strange, leaving him raw-edged and weary. He begins walking to his cabin, fighting to choke down the terrible consequences of his failure. Carmen watches from her rocker on his porch. His posture is stooped with a weariness that runs deeper than physical exhaustion. His ragged features are overcome with failure and shame. It troubles her to witness her proud friend bearing Felipe's burden. As he walks up the steps, she says, "It will be okay." He folds his exhausted body into his rocker. Carmen pats him on the arm. "The land. She knows. She will tell us. Wait. Be patient." He looks at Carmen with blank eyes and a growing savage fury to succeed. "Tomorrow is the 18th, he says. Carmen does not answer. What can she say? The day will be what it will be. She rises. He helps her down the steps. She waves him away and walks slowly to the house. Morning arrives, and with it a dull, flat silence filled with dread. Rudy burns his fingers making coffee. The tractor spits and sputters, refusing to start. All day he searches the sky, waiting. Carmen sits at her bedroom window, praying, the slight tremor in her hands her only concession to fear. But each day is only 24 hours, and finally the day is over. Rudy climbs into bed, hoping exhaustion will erase his anxiety and allow him to rest. Hours later, he feels a tapping at the edges of sleep. He struggles to wakefulness. He pulls back the curtains to see a soft, flickering light on the ground. He pulls on jeans and boots, grabs a flannel shirt, heads out the door. A shaggy white creature looms in the field. For a second, he thinks one of Masterson's cows has wandered through a hole in the fence. It is an immense, milky white goat with pink slits for eyes. Gnarly curled horns sit on top of a mottled gray beard that kisses the ground. At the end of spindly legs are hooves the size of hockey pucks. The goat stands outside a large circle of broken twigs. 5 Jesus Malverde candles in glass holders burn at the points of a pentagram. No, 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 it cannot be. Even Felipe would not do this. But he is wrong. It is Asabat. A word so frightening it is spoken only in hushed whispers. Asabat, ceremony of the devil. According to legend, kissing the goat's tail will bind Felipe and the land to Jesus Malverde and the devil. Every nightmare, fear, and wound Rudy has ever felt flow together into a frothing river of dread. Felipe stands outside the circle in a black velvet robe with a golden pentagram embroidered on the left shoulder. The robe is open, revealing his bare chest and a solid gold chain with a medallion of Jesus Malverde. He kneels, leans forward, taps his forehead on the ground 3 times, then rises and lifts his hands over his head, palms to the sky, and cries out, "I go without God and without the Holy Virgin." A tall man Rudy does not recognize holds the end of a long, thick rope looped around the goat's neck. He leads the goat over the twigs into the middle of the circle. He swirls his index finger in a circle 3 times. Felipe begins to slowly walk inside the circle of twigs. Rudy runs straight into a lifeless cloud of dark energy that crushes his muscles and bleeds into his tendons. He trembles in pain, frozen and useless, as a light flicks on in the main house. Carmen appears at the open window in a long white robe, holding a silver filigreed cross. She stands upright and strong, silently weeping. Felipe continues walking, his steps measured and slow. He stops behind the goat and begins a slow forward bend. The soft folds of his robe puddle into a large circle around him. As he puckers to kiss the goat's tail, delight dances across his face. He has found his true calling. As he reaches the goat's tail, Carmen's voice, strong, clear, and pure, seasoned by decades of rosaries, begins. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Her prayers are carried by angels across the field, frightening the goat, who rears back, kicking its hind legs in fury. His gigantic hooves catch Felipe in the chest. There is a bone-shattering crack as Felipe falls backwards to the ground. The man drops the rope, turns and runs into the night, speeding up as the goat chases after him. Carmen shuffles slowly to the porch. Her eyes are glassy. her rosary clutched between white gnarled fingers. As she reaches the porch, Rudy races towards her and places his hand gently on her elbow. As if sleepwalking, she guides him into the field. When they reach the circle of twigs, Rudy walks to a flickering candle, spits it out, then kicks it, flying over the field. He continues with each candle until the only illumination is harsh, glaring moonlight. Carmen walks to Felipe. "Forgive me," he pleads, choking with sobs and flinching in pain. Carmen looks at Felipe smeared with dirt and regret. She stares at him, this man-child mangled by lust and greed. Her soul rips apart as she hisses, "Get off my land. I never want to see you here again." Exhausted by this outburst, Carmen straightens up, gives her arm to Rudy. He takes it, and step by tiny step, they return to the porch. Dawn begins peeking over the horizon. It takes every bit of energy for Carmen to lower herself onto her rocker. Rudy brings her a mug of coffee, hot and steaming. Carmen takes a sip and waits for her strength to return. Rudy lays his hand on the edge of her rocker. She places her hand over his, and they gaze out at the land, ripe and fertile, like a young girl with many suitors. Suddenly, Rudy's heart freezes. Through the heavy morning mist, he sees Juan Cortego Jr. marching toward him. A lifetime of prayer and fortitude has filled him with unbreakable confidence. His angular face is peaceful, serene, immune to the troubles of this world. Lying in the field, Felipe senses movement and lifts his head. Seeing Juan Cortego Jr., Felipe breaks into cracked, hysterical sobs as he glimpses his bleak future. On Rudy's porch, an empty rocking chair appears. Juan Cortego Jr. mounts the steps and sits in the rocking chair, assuming his rightful position. Carmen, surrounded by men of courage and honor, sits upright and proud. A contemplative quiet unfolds as a lone cricket chirps one last time. The morning feels tender, pierced by a small ache from the last malignant statue. Juan Cortego Jr. looks at Rudy, then raises his chin toward the circle. He points at the middle of the pentagram. "Could it be there?" he asks with his eyes. Rudy shrugs. He is uncertain. He stands, begins to pull the spade from his pocket. Before he has a chance to take a step, Carmen says, "Wait." Rudy sits. Carmen wears the unfettered, tranquil look of the faithful. As they rest in their rockers, the silence deepens and widens, swelling the land with expectation. All of them, together, with unwavering resolve, will wait for the land to reveal her secret. I hope you enjoyed listening. Please hit like and subscribe for more stories.